First speaker up for after lunch session is going to, and this is in the context of this being the Safeguarding RSE session. She's going to talk about what a rights-based approach beyond compliance looks like in RSE from a human rights perspective. And so it's my great pleasure to welcome Dr. Gail Pacheco, who's the Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner from the Human Rights Commission. Please give her a hand.
Wow, it is bright up here. And usually when I come up, the first thing I've got to do is bring the mic down, no matter where I go. Kia ora everyone, and thank you so much for coming to this session. As she just said, we're in a session on safeguarding RSE workers. So I'm going to be talking a few things around kind of the human rights and the potential for exploitation in this space, while at the same time I acknowledge, as we saw in this morning's session, all the amazing positive things that are happening in this space and the amazing positive things that employers are doing above and beyond as well. So I just wanted to frame that context before I begin and also say I'm coming at this from an economics perspective. So I'm the Equal Employment Opportunities Commissioner at Te Kahui Tika Tangata, the Human Rights Commission, but prior to that I was a professor of economics, and I used to be a productivity commissioner as well. So I often come at things through the human rights lens, but also through an economics and productivity lens to look at where can we get gains in both areas. So how can we advance human rights while at the same time advancing productivity growth for New Zealand? So the areas I want to cover is first to tell you a little bit about the Human Rights Commission, because I find that in a number of presentations I give, not everyone seems to know much about what we do as an organization. And then what we found in our review of the RSE scheme a few years ago, what we have done since then and a champions network we've put together. Then I'll also talk about some of the productivity impacts from that, and then our ask in that space around tied visas. So first, a little bit about us. What do we do at the Human Rights Commission, Te Kahui Tika Tangata? Well, we're mainly governed by the Human Rights Act of 1993. And these are our three key functions. So we're here to promote and protect human rights for everyone in New Zealand. And I often stress the everyone part in that sentence. We're here for everyone in New Zealand. We're also here to encourage maintenance of harmonious relations, so a fancy term for social cohesion. And in the last bullet point, those are our priority areas. So that's why we have three priority areas within the Commission under our Act: equal employment opportunities, and that's why I'm the EEO Commissioner. There's a Race Relations Commissioner, Disability Rights Commissioner, and then complemented with that is a Chief Human Rights Commissioner. So the four of us oversee the organization. We form the board of the organization and we determine our strategy and direction. One of the things we did in terms of looking at migrant visas is we did a review of the RSE scheme in 2022, and some of the key findings are still relevant today. We also did alongside that a review of the accredited employer work visa scheme, and many of those findings are still heavily relevant today, and I won't have time to touch on it, but I wanted to point both reviews out, particularly as I'm not going to talk about the second one. Feel free to go have a look at some of the key recommendations from that one on our website. So what did we do in the 2022 one? Well, we found that employer-tied visas really create this potential for that power imbalance, right? So if there's the possibility of exploitation occurring, then if you're tied to your employer, that makes it a little bit more difficult to leave a situation where there is exploitation occurring. There was some evidence, and I stress again, I'm saying this in the context of all the other positive things that are happening, but there was some evidence of unreasonable wage deductions, poor accommodation, and concerns with access to health care. So we know some of these issues are ongoing. We know we are having a review of the scheme, and particularly with focus on accommodation standards at the moment. So we know there are ongoing issues here that many employers are doing well in the space, but how can we continue to improve the human rights standards in this space? And overall, the review in 2022 found insufficient oversight, enforcement, and accountability when there was a breach occurring. So our key recommendations was that we should allow participants to easily change employer. So you can change employer under a number of temporary schemes, but here we wanted the ability to change employer if exploitation occurs or there's the need to. To lift accommodation standards was the other key recommendation, and to provide a very specific list of allowable deductions, so a really templated list of what is the range for different deductions. And of course, ensure ongoing engagement with workers, Pacific communities, unions, and human rights organizations. And we saw that there's actually quite a lot of that happening in the previous session when they talked about a number of these spaces. So I think we've made really good gains on that last bullet point since that review. So I came into this role in 2024 after that review had been done. And one of the things I've been working on, apart from a range of other things, because my portfolio covers women's rights, like pay equity, it covers business and human rights, so it covers things like AI, covers gender-based violence, domestic violence. So apart from all of those other areas, one of the things that I wanted to do to make use of this review work was to put together a champions network. So we've done a lot of research. How do we leverage off that research? So we put together a group of migrant workers, unions, the Citizens Advice Bureau, where a lot of migrants go to with queries, whether they're temporary migrants or RSE workers, modern slavery specialists, advocates, etc. We put a group together, and our aim was how do we build relationships across all of us so that we can, one, develop narratives about what's happening in the space, and develop a messaging guide. And then we did a survey as well. So we did a survey, a representative sample of 1,000. So this covers all migrants, not just RSE workers. And 94% of the migrants, 94% of people in the survey knew that migrants come to New Zealand for a very specific period of time, and that they're attached to their employer and cannot easily move employers. And I don't expect you to look at all the results in this table, and there's many more results on the website, Horizon poll that we did, but probably the key one I wanted to point out on this table was that 77% said migrant workers make an important contribution to our society. I think that's really important to point out. Too often we get kind of negative commentary around the role of migrants, or whether they're RSE workers or others, whereas the majority of New Zealanders say that migrants are making a very important contribution to our society. And what's also important, only 5% said they disagree. So whenever you're looking at numbers like this, when they're presented in the media, have a look at what the flip side is, because just because 50% agree with something or 70% agree with something doesn't always mean 30% disagree. So here, there's about 20% who don't have a view, but 77% agree and only 5% disagreed with this. The other thing I found useful was 80-odd% of people surveyed said the government should make meaningful steps to deal with any migrant exploitation when it occurs. Okay. and a very small number disagreed with that. Okay, so again, the key messages are there was a huge amount of New Zealanders who said we value the contribution that migrants make, and if there's exploitation, we believe the government should do something to deal with that exploitation. The other thing I'll point out is what the productivity impacts are from making sure we mitigate against migrant exploitation, whether more generally or in the RSE scheme. And really interestingly, in my previous role, as I pointed out, I was a productivity commissioner. So now so there was 3 commissioners at the New Zealand Productivity Commission. I did this role from 2019 to 2022. I left about a year before the commission was disestablished. But one of the inquiries we did, and our role was to do inquiries and report to Cabinet, one of the main inquiries where I was there for was one on immigration. So I come at it from that productivity lens, and that was at the end of 2022. We did an inquiry on immigration policy, and it's titled Immigration Fit for the Future. Really useful, data-driven, evidence-focused inquiry. And there's an accompanying paper that sits with it called Immigration by the Numbers, and it covers a huge range and looks at RSE as well in that. And what we found that in that inquiry, looking at it from a productivity focus, was tied visas can reduce competition and weaken productivity, and that it significantly weakens bargaining power if you're tied to your employer, and it carries a significant risk for broader labor market outcomes, and that we need to ensure good job-to-job mobility for productivity impacts. So what I like about this example is that in our human rights review, the focus was around ending tied visas. When I did the same thing from a productivity angle at the Productivity Commission, again, the same focus came up from a very different angle. So for both different reasons, it came up with the same result to end tied visas. So final couple of slides. What we did, based on all of this information, what we did at the end of last year on International Migrants Day, was we brought that coalition of champions together. We wrote an open letter to all political parties. We're an independent Crown entity, so we appealed to all political parties. And we put out a range of social media tiles and a release of our messaging guide with the key ask to adopt the policy of ending tied visas for the election that's upcoming. And that would be, I think, like I said, the key recommendation we'd ask for, whether it's the RSE scheme or the accredited employer work visa scheme. Either way, I think that would be very helpful to reduce any potential for exploitation of migrants in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ngā mihi nui, thank you for your time.